UConn and Geno Auriemma have zero concerns when it comes to going up against top-ranked opponents.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball, your number one daily podcast for all things women's basketball. So lock in with us. I'm Taliah Butler. Joined alongside me is Sophia Jones. On today's agenda, we're going to go over some of the games that we mentioned for you to take a look at over the weekend, some big ones on Saturday and Sunday. But we're going to start off with UConn, obviously, because they are remaining dominant. Before we jump into that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Getting back to the topic of UConn and USC, we mentioned in our podcast on Friday that UConn was going to remain undefeated against a top-ranked opponent in USC, and we were correct. 79-51 was the final score from that game. AZ Fudd led all Huskies in scoring with 17 points. She was 6 of 11 from the field, 3 of 6 from three-point range. You had Ashlyn Shade that came in with 15 points. Sarah Strong contributing 14 points, and Blanca Quinones with 12 points. Just an overall pretty balanced attack, which we expect from these UConn Huskies. It was just hard for USC to respond. Kennedy Smith stepping in with 16 points. But there wasn't as much of a balanced scoring attack as we would have expected in response to UConn coming from USC.
USC just was overwhelmed by UConn. UConn really jumped out first. They extended their lead early in that, early in the game, towards the end of the first quarter, and in the second quarter, they had a lot of full court pressure and never really gave USC the chance to find a rhythm and recover. Even for USC, they seemed to be really rattled by UConn's press. They had a couple times, one struggling to even get the ball inbounded, get the ball across half court, and then the problems just continued when they got the ball across half court, because with less time in the shot clock, they really didn't have any offensive cohesiveness. They were either forced into contested shots, or if they were open shots, it felt and looked really rushed, which UConn was just constantly speeding them up. And that's why we're seeing just a really low shooting percentage day by USC. They only shot 30% from the field, 21% from three. So UConn's defense really helped to set the tone this game.
And some more glaring stats looking at this box score is points in the paint. For UConn, there were 44 compared to USC's 22 points in the paint, which is something we mentioned. Obviously, UConn has a very big interior presence, but we did talk about USC being able to get downhill, especially with their guard play, and score within the paint. Obviously having a little bit of a tough time doing that, but also points off of turnovers. UConn had 26 points off turnovers compared to USC's 12. So you talk about that pressure. USC was just kind of giving the ball up. We've seen that in previous games for them when they're going up against just very defensive, effective teams. They can get rushed, they can get a little nervous, and they do end up turning the ball over.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one of USC's strengths is they do play a lot on the perimeter, and 1 through 5 can essentially handle the ball. However, it felt like in certain moments, USC just really needed to get the ball to their point guard and allow them to dictate the pace and control over the game. There were a number of times where either it was Jassy Davidson or Kara Dunn, Kennedy Smith, they were all bringing the ball up the court, but it didn't really look smooth because UConn, they're constantly switching on defense as well. So if you're trying to get into any type of pick and roll action and get downhill off of a ball screen, their defender is just right there sitting, waiting for you. And yeah, it was just UConn was totally ramping up the defensive pressure. I think if there was an area that kind of worked for USC, like you mentioned, it was at getting downhill into the free throw line. At least they shot 20 free throws compared to UConn's 15. So a little bit better there. UConn had 18 personal fouls compared to USC's 11, but it's hard to get past a poor shooting game as a whole entire team.
And I mentioned Kennedy Smith being the leader scorer for USC, 16 points. A second on the team was London Jones, who had 14 points. But coming into this game, UConn head coach Geno Auriemma said that Jazzy Davidson was maybe the best freshman in the country. She had a little bit of a really tough shooting day too. She only had 10 points. She was 3 of 13 from the field and 2 of 3 from three-point range. So she wasn't able to attack as much as we've seen her before.
We haven't, and you can thank the team defense by UConn for shutting her down. But to highlight a player, AZ Fudd took on that guarding responsibility the majority of the game. And for AZ to be maybe a little bit undersized in height, she really made up for it in her ability to move laterally and her strength. She really gave Jazzy Davidson no clean looks throughout the entire game. So AZ Fudd just really did a great job on both ends of the floor. I felt like this was maybe one of her best defensive performances of the season.
And I think that's what we're really seeing in the development of AZ's game too. We know how crucial she is offensively for the Huskies and how tenacious she is behind that three-point line and just being able to get a bucket at any really given time. She's always hands ready to shoot. But defensively, I think is going to, we talked about Sarah Strong being a candidate for being the player of the year. I think the more that we see AZ become essentially a two-way player and have the sort of defensive intensity that she has started this season out with, she could absolutely be in those conversations as well. And it's just going to elevate her game even further than we've already seen. We know that she is a solid defender, but I think to your point, knowing that she's a little bit undersized compared to a Jazzy Davidson, but still making it so difficult for her on the day, who is one of their leading scorers at USC, shows that she can still lock down defensively.
Definitely. And AZ Fudd, she has her shooting, especially that three-point percentage. When you're looking at a prospect who will probably be in the WNBA next season, you're looking for a lot of these skills that can translate. Shooting is one that can translate, and defense, you will be guarding a different caliber of player in the WNBA. But if you at least have a really great foundation and framework on the defensive end, that only boosts your stock. And so I think that AZ Fudd really showcased that this past game.
Absolutely. The Huskies have just been a really fun team to watch. We said this was a little bit of a test for USC. Unfortunately, not able to respond, but we've mentioned it time and time again. Still just building some maturity, a lot of young, fresh faces for USC, obviously without Juju Watkins, trying to make it through this season. I think they will find their way. But coming up next, we're going to discuss that in-state battle between Texas and Baylor. The holidays always show up faster than we expect. And if you're still putting together gifts, last minute decor, or getting your home ready for guests, Wayfair has you covered. Whether you need a quick room refresh, new bedding, or those final seasonal touches, Wayfair makes it easy to get what you need fast. Wayfair is your one-stop shop for everything home, with decor, furniture, kitchen essentials, and gifts for every style and every budget, all delivered quickly and easily. Their selection is huge: bedding, decor, kitchen gear, kids' room updates. I was able to find everything in just one place. Get last-minute hosting essentials, gifts for all your loved ones, and decor to celebrate the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. NFL Sunday moves fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit fanduel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Texas ends up defeating Baylor 89-54. That was a pretty fun game to begin with. Obviously started to build some separation between Texas and Baylor. There was also a lot of former Texas players that come to the game. One, for the Chicago Sky purposes, Ariel Atkins was at the game. Love that girl down. Sophia, what did you like most about what we saw from Texas in this game?
They had constant defensive pressure, full court and in the half court. Vic Schaefer does not care if his team is 2 points or 30 points because he's going to have his players pick up and guard the ball the entire length of the floor. They forced so many Baylor turnovers and they were getting a ton of steals. They had 19 on the game, and so that really led to them thriving off of points, off of turnovers. They had 42 points off of turnovers. So essentially, you talk about you want to create your offense from your defense. Texas essentially generated almost half of their offense directly from their defense, just in that specific statistical category. They also had 30 fast break points because they were just getting the ball and going. Baylor forced into a lot of live ball turnovers as well. And they really started off the game strong with the defense that Rory Harmon played on Taliah Scott. She was essentially face guarding her, trying to not even let her get a touch in. But Taliah Scott went down in that second quarter, grabbing at her ankle and did not return. That was a major blow to Baylor. She's their leading scorer, one of the leading scorers in the nation as well. And it was when she went down that actually looked like Baylor started to slow Texas down just a little bit. They were playing some zone defense, getting a couple stops, but they weren't able to make up any ground after Taliah Scott's injury. Their offense really slowed down because she is their primary playmaker, and she really keeps the defense honest, draws a lot of attention, which only allows other players to create as well. So Baylor was forced to play a lot more team offense, but when you're trying to find those seams in a Texas Longhorn defense, it's pretty tough to find any gaps because Texas was really there at every single dribble and every pass.
We mentioned that in our preview of the game as well, that the offense and essentially Baylor as a whole runs as Taliah Scott goes. We talked about Dariana Littlepage-Buggs as well, who seems like she's still needing to find a little bit of her groove. There was a lot of highlight and spotlight on her at the beginning of this season to be a significant contributor. But when you talk about Taliah Scott going down, which is going to be a big problem for Baylor on what they're going to do in these upcoming games, even though she went down, she still remained one of the leading scorers of the game. She had 9 total points, and essentially every other player that had a team high also had 9 points. There was 2 other players alongside her that had 9 points. When we're talking about Dariana Littlepage-Buggs, she had 6 points. So they could really find zero offensive rhythm. And as you mentioned, Taliah Scott went out of the game significantly early with her injury, and the fact that nobody else was able to kind of make up that slack of her being gone is going to prove to be an issue if she stays out of games coming up.
Definitely. And really hope that she is okay and hopefully makes that speedy recovery. But I mean, you talk about she had 9 points in 14 minutes. Not the most efficient, but she was 4-4 from the free throw line. So when you at least look at putting pressure on the Texas defense from the foul line, she presented that opportunity right then and there. But it's hard as a team to find any offensive rhythm when you have 30 turnovers, which is what Baylor had for the game. A lot of it was Texas. Some of those turnovers, you could just tell that they were a little offensively frustrated. There were some offensive fouls that just a little bit of an arm extension or running through a screen that maybe if you were in a better flow, those don't happen. So saw that from them, but Baylor at least did compete in the rebounding battle. Texas only out-rebounded them by 1. It was 34-33. So you like that aspect that Baylor was able to be competitive in for the game. But if Taliah Scott is out for a prolonged period of time, they are definitely going to need to find where that offense comes from because she really generated just so much for them.
When we're looking at, what Texas did well, obviously a very efficient offensive team, but also getting it done on the defensive side of things as well. No surprise, Madison Booker had 27 points on the day, 12 of 17 from the field. You also had Jordan Lee, who had 19 points on the day. And just another balanced scoring attack from Texas. Rory Harmon, 12 points. Justice Carlton, 8 points. Texas just seems to have really put things together. Like they are really looking like a well-oiled machine. And you've talked about how efficient they are offensively. They don't waste a lot of movements, but they're also applying all this defensive pressure against teams too. And we saw that obviously in some of those standout games of them being able to beat a UCLA, beat a South Carolina. That's also part of what keeps them in these games and starts to build that gap between teams because yes, they are scoring, but also their defensive stops are fueling even more of a rally for them essentially.
Yeah, when you talk about a defense that moves as one, that's exactly what Texas presents. You want your players to look like they're moving on a string. There's a specific device and piece of equipment used in practice in some basketball teams where essentially you have players tethered and they're all connected by this rope and just moving around. And it looks like Texas has that invisible tether all connected to all 5 of their players when they're moving defensively. They help heavily as a team, sending help through the box, through the nail. But as soon as they get there and they stop the ball handler and force them to pass out, there's another person or that same defender just there instantly on the catch. So they just move so well as a unit. And I mean, when you can force 30 turnovers against a Baylor squad that is pretty good, they're a top-ranked team, then that is just really impressive. And I think that Texas, if they can continue to defend at this high level, they're going to continue to be a real problem. I think UConn definitely got themselves a great win. They dominated USC, so that helps them in terms of resume. But Texas is starting to close that gap a little bit on UConn's heels.
Yeah, Texas and UConn proving to be the top teams in the NCAA. But stick with us because there is more top 25 action to get into.
Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. You've all heard them before. It's just stress, I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED, designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. Visit rugiet.com/lockedonnba to get 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com/lockedonnba. And don't forget to use our code LOCKEDONNBA so they know that we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves.
More in our top 25 action to discuss. South Carolina defeats Penn State 95-55. Joyce Edwards had a career high 29 points, 6 blocks, 4 steals. That was a career, like I mentioned, was a career high for her. But the Gamecocks, who are now 10-1, had just 8 players for the whole game. We've talked about that depth for them a little bit. They were missing Medina Okot, and as well as Agat McKeer. But they are just continuing to separate themselves from the pack, essentially. And you also had Taniya Latson that came in with 18 points, while Raven Johnson and Tessa Johnson both had 15 points apiece. They are starting to look to get back to their regular South Carolina ways.
And I think when you characterize regular South Carolina ways, you think about all the intangibles that their players bring to the floor. So that hustle and effort, and just everyone seeming to have that dog in them. And I think that's what we're starting to see more and more. I think we definitely saw that last game or against Penn State from Joyce Edwards specifically. And it's difficult for a player like Joyce Edwards because I think when she's playing, it appears like the game comes so naturally to her and she moves so gracefully that it almost doesn't look like she's trying, even though she is. But it's just because she has those natural gifts. And I think that this game, though, you could see her really start to take control and really force the issue sometimes. And if you could really get her to open up that aspect of her game, I think that South Carolina could continue to be really dominant.
Absolutely. We love seeing the Gamecocks play, obviously. Another one within the ACC, Louisville finally getting their first win against a ranked opponent this season. They defeated North Carolina 76-66 in overtime. What did you like about that game, Sophia?
Well, that overtime specifically, they shut out North Carolina, outscored them 10-0. So you talk about having great closing speed, and that is what Louisville showcased. They were 6 of 6 from the free throw line, so extremely clutch as well. But they had really balanced scoring throughout the whole game. They had 4 players in double figures, and not just starters. You're getting 13 points off the bench from Marion Barry. But I was glad. And I think Louisville was due for a really competitive win like this. They played a lot of top-ranked opponents, really tight. We talked about them last week, I believe, when they played South Carolina and lost very narrowly. One wide open three-pointer away from getting that win, actually. But so I think for them, this was a great resume booster to get this win. And now this is ACC play. You're starting to get into conference. So to start it off with what was the top-ranked team in North Carolina, that's making a statement right there.
Absolutely. Louisville was doing pretty well shooting-wise that day too. 40% from the field, 30% from three-point range, and 82% from free throw. As you mentioned, they were shooting, especially in overtime, 6 of 6 from the free throw line, which really held them and separated them in that game. But we had another in-state matchup as well. Oklahoma defeating Oklahoma State 92-70, which means Oklahoma is currently on a 10-game win streak. Obviously, a pretty significant win right now, going up against number 23 Oklahoma State. So doing so against good competition as well. Reagan Beers had 22 points and 12 rebounds, which we just have mentioned how prolific of a scorer she is, as well as Sarah Williams, 18 points, Aaliyah Chavez, 15 points, which is who we had also mentioned that you got to keep your eye on when it comes to Oklahoma.
Definitely. Whenever you get into in-state rivalries, I feel like especially one that has a lot going on for it, like a Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State, it could be easy to let external factors affect your game on the floor. And so for Oklahoma to not allow that, I think it was a real testament to the squad, who is 11-1 now currently. That only loss coming to UCLA at the beginning of the season, and they've really been on a tear since that game, quite frankly. But just, I think they really got it done, especially in that third quarter. That third quarter is where they started to create separation. During the first half, it was a little bit more back and forth, a tighter game, but they outscored Oklahoma State 30-19 in that third. So that's when you really start to see them, or see that distance, and had a ton of defensive plays on the day. They had 12 steals and 7 blocks. That's compared to only 4 steals and 2 blocks by Oklahoma State. So getting it done on the defensive end, they have so many great athletes. They really are a team that thrives in creating chaos, and then they capitalize offensively throughout that chaos. And that's why we saw just the really solid field goal percentage, shooting 51% from the field on a day. Very impressive. But just that balanced scoring effort doesn't happen without their defensive pressure as a team.
Absolutely. A really exciting weekend of games, honestly. Sophia, if you could give us your main takeaway from what you saw across all these NCAA games this weekend, what would be your initial thought?
My initial thought, I would definitely just bring it back to UConn, where I think they're looking still like the strongest team in the NCAA. But right under them is Texas. And I think UConn and Texas, I don't know if we'll see them flip at all, unless if Texas is able to really dominate the SEC come conference play, because that's what's expected of UConn in the Big East. But I look at those two teams compared to some of the other teams in the top 10 or in the top 5, even like a South Carolina, UCLA, and LSU. And it feels like those two squads are a little bit more unbeatable than the others.
I think most people have picked up on by now from how we've spoken about all these teams. I've absolutely hopped on the Texas bandwagon. UConn is always going to remain dominant, but really excited to see when we get into the full swing of conference play what these AP polls are going to continue looking like, who can shake up the polls. But that'll do it for us today on Locked On Women's Basketball. Thank you guys so much for tuning in with us. We will be back to chat with you all again tomorrow.